So I don't know if you got to read the article that I sent with the newsletter. Article on
No.
trust had a really nice graphic.
Oh, I
So
didn't see it.
maybe we can start with that.
Where was it? It was with the
It was
email?
in the newsletter. What I've done is I've started putting either links or a little blurb underneath the image that goes along with the topic to give some background, because Carrie had asked if we would do some background for some of our topics.
Oh, I did
when we do
not
that.
see that.
Yeah. So what I
Right.
can show you,
Can you bring it up?
yeah,
She can share her screen.
that's right. So there are 4 different conditions of trust. And this came from a guy that does this teaching, and I'm not an expert, so I'm just kind of paraphrasing what I've kind of seen. But I thought, we could talk about the integrity of trust, and the implied promise of I am who I say I am. And then we had talked last week about kind of questioning that and finding the confidence to be solid in that belief.
Yeah.
And so to do that, these middle 2 things, assess and listen and inquiry, are ways to kind of take that self-assessment, assess your workability of your agreements. Do you go thoroughly through agreements to come up with this contract of trust or whatever you want to call it? Or do you inquire about yourself? Are the actions reflecting my intentions really? Or are you not that thorough? And maybe this trust goes awry because you've changed your mind or somebody else's circumstances changed. And we didn't really think through it in terms of an agreement. And then the outcome, if you are consistent in making sure that you are who you are, say what you do, agree to and stick to what you do, the outcome is then dignity. Any commentary on this one for integrity? How do you do integrity checks?
Well, I think it all boils down to honesty, and you have to start with honesty within yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself, you're not expected to be honest with other people. And you're not who you say you are who you show me you are. The I am who I say I am. Well,
Yeah.
show me. Don't tell me, show me.
Uh-huh.
And that's all part of the assessment and the agreements. Do your actions reflect who you are?
Yep.
And if they don't reflect who you are, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to assume you're who you show me you are. My Angelo Maya, I'm not sure if I pronounced the name.
Maya Angelou.
Yeah. Maya Angelou. She said, when somebody tells you who they are, believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it the first time. Don't sit there and say, "Oh, that can't be true."
Yeah. Yeah. And then time will tell, right?
I think it. When I was being raised, the thing that was harped into my head is don't be the boy who cried wolf.
Right.
So if you tell the truth, people will believe you. If you constantly lie, well, no one will believe you. And that's where it shows, it combines all 4 of those things. But we have to rely on the divine fact that we are given the wisdom to trust ourselves if we want to, but we have to believe we have that divine wisdom to know that. I don't know. I kind of think that God is not going to sell me short on gifts. And one of those gifts is, figuring out who I am and that I can trust my own judgments. And when we trust our own judgments, we kind of leave ourselves vulnerable to somebody else coming along and being the last one to speak in our ear And we believe that instead of ourselves. You know, and
Yeah.
we just have to trust that we're given the right tools to honestly evaluate the situation and then rely on that.
Mhm.
Say, I believe it, therefore I believe it, and walk away believing it. And
Mhm.
don't walk away going, oh, that might not have been right. No, you have been given divine gifts of being confident in yourself.
So Laura, last
Yeah.
week you were saying that when somebody breaks trust, you have a hard time gaining it back.
Yeah.
So what would it take, or what conversation might you have to try to reestablish a sense of trust with someone?
Well, I did a little research,
Hmm.
and first of all, I wanted to just give you the definition of trust.
Okay.
And I looked in several different places, and they all say basically the same thing.
Okay.
It's a firm belief in the character, abilities, strength, or truth of someone or something, a person or thing in which confidence can be placed. Um, Trust in someone else is having a strong belief in their goodness, um, or their reliability. I count a lot on reliability.
Mhm.
You know, there are certain people I know I can rely on if they tell me they're going to do something,
Yeah.
and know they will. But there are other people that I don't,
Right.
that I absolutely don't. Um, and it's a confident. You have to build a confidence with somebody
Hmm.
before you can really put your trust in them, and in things too, like I rely on my car, that I trust that it will start every time I go out there to get in it.
Right.
I rely on my alarm clock every morning to wake me up. And sometimes I get really nervous about that. And I don't sleep well when I know I have to get up really super early.
Yeah.
I don't sleep well. But if I just leave it alone and don't even put the alarm on, I usually wake up in time. So it's trusting in myself.
Uh-huh.
Um, I know the alarm will go off, but there's always that little voice in your head that's saying, what if you don't hear it? And especially since I take my hearing aids out at night, I'm always
Mhm.
afraid I might not hear it.
Right.
So sometimes I even set 2 alarms just in case I don't hear them. But I usually wake up right before they go off. So
Mhm.
um so that helps. Um Relying on people to do the right thing, that's a hard one too. Um just believing in somebody enough that you know you can always rely on them. I have trouble relying on my own daughter,
Yeah.
because most of the time when I call her, she doesn't answer her phone.
Yeah.
And so I always have to leave a message. Um, and that scares me because I feel like if I really needed her, if it was an emergency, would she pick up?
Right.
And so I had a conversation with her and I asked her that. I said, I know you don't answer your phone at work, but is there some way that I can depend on you if I need you in an emergency? And she said, well, Mom, I don't worry about you because you're healthy. Really?
Really? Blinders.
I wish I could
That
believe
doesn't
that.
answer the question.
Oh my
Right.
God. Did you think I was going to have a heart attack 11 years ago and almost died? But anyway,
So would you put
um,
her in a category? Look at these four across the left
yeah,
conditions. Would it be a reliability thing or a lack of involvement? Does she just not want to be involved?
it's kind of both of those things.
Really? Yeah.
She's involved in a new relationship, and so she's all into that. And
Uh-huh.
I understand that, but it still makes me a little concerned. I mean, and when I say that to my friends, they're all like, well, you know, you can count on us.
Right.
I have several people in my life that I know I could count on,
Yeah.
but she's my kid. I should be able to count on her.
I don't know. Some kids just don't have it in them, you
I know
know?
she's almost 55 years old.
One would think that they would grow up over time.
Jeez. And I know she would answer it if it was her dad, because he is very sickly. And he's been on borrowed time for a long time. So that kind of makes me a little bit
Yeah.
jealous,
Ah,
that she
Yeah.
would answer if it was him.
right.
And that was her comparison was, well, he's not healthy and you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. Would you like to see all the pills I take every day?
Yeah.
Anyway, so
Did you reach out to Kathy last week? We thought about maybe she's your backup plan, your person.
Kathy,
Was it Kathy or Cynthia? Cynthia, Kathy,
Cindy,
Cindy.
Okay.
Cindy, she always tells me that she would always be there if I needed
And
her.
she would,
Yeah, she
Okay.
would.
if it was at all physically
Um,
possible, she would be.
So trusting other people is really about reliability.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And because you feel safe with them,
Yeah.
that they would always be there if you needed them. You have confidence that they won't hurt you or let you down.
Right.
And trust is the foundation of relationships,
Mhm.
because it allows you to be vulnerable and to open up to that person without having to protect yourself. And another thing I thought was interesting was trust is a feeling. It's an emotion, which is interesting. A belief in the probability that a person will behave in a certain way.
Yeah.
So it's a feeling of confidence with that person and security with that person. Then I saw an interesting article about ways to build trust.
Mhm.
I wish I could bring it up, but I wrote it down. So, and this was in your personal life and in your work life, ways to build trust.
Okay.
And number one is value relationships, especially about the future.
Mhm.
Value a person that you'll be able to trust, not just now, but also in the future.
Right.
Number two is to always be honest. And I think that's the implied promise
Mhm.
is always be honest. Number three is honor your commitments and your promises. Number four is admit when you are wrong. And that was something that I learned in Al-Anon.
Mhm.
That's one of the 12 steps is admitting you are wrong and taking responsibility for that. That's always been a hard one for me too.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to childhood, because I grew up in an alcoholic home. So if I did something wrong, man, I was really going to get punished. I was going to either get a beating or, something serious. So
Yeah.
I was afraid I'd get yelled at. I was afraid of my father, and especially when he was drunk.
Yeah.
And so I was always, when I was a kid, I was afraid to admit that I was wrong. And I don't think I ever really got over that until I got into Al-Anon. And that was one of the steps. Working that step was admitting that you're wrong. Promptly admitting that you're wrong is in the
Uh-huh.
step. 5 is communicate effectively. And that also includes to be a good listener.
Mhm.
6 is to be vulnerable, to be open and show your feelings instead of hiding your feelings and not letting people see who you really are and how you really feel about something. 7 was to be helpful. And one of the examples of that one was like remembering details, like a name or something that somebody told you, to remember that so that you could bring it up so that they know that you were really listening.
Mhm.
I've been accused of not listening, and is so untrue, because when I don't know what to say, I'm quiet, but it doesn't mean I'm not listening, because I
Right.
am.
Right.
So Number 8 is show people you care. Number 9 is to stand up for what's right. And number 10 is to be transparent. So I thought those all made a lot of sense. I guess my biggest problem with trust is trusting in the universe, trusting in God. I don't think I did for a long time because my life was so miserable, like 2 divorces, and it was just I kept making bad choices, and I kept choosing the same type of person.
Yeah.
And that because that's what I was used to.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I got into Al-Anon that I learned that that's what I was doing,
Right.
so that I could learn how to make better choices. But I was very angry with God and religion when I first went into Al-Anon. It was even hard for me to say the Lord's Prayer because I didn't want to say Father,
Yeah.
because that brought up stuff
Yep.
for me
Yep.
with my father. And I couldn't say the word God either for a long time.
Mhm.
So I started calling it my higher power, and that made it easier for me.
Yeah.
That was an easier thing to say. But I have to say that when I was in the throes of that heart attack and I was on that table and I was in such excruciating pressure in my body,
Mhm.
I surrendered. I finally just looked up and said, God, if you need to take me now, it's okay.
Wow.
And so I trusted that whatever was going to happen was going to happen, that
Mhm.
it would be the right thing. So, and I was chosen to stay here. So that helped me a lot with faith
Yeah.
and trust. Faith and trust too, I think, are very synonymous. But there was a interesting analogy in the stuff I was reading about that said, faith is knowing that the chair will hold you, but trust is sitting down on it.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like that. I gotta remember that one. That was a good one. So what do you think? Any of those things ring true for you guys?
Yeah.
Well, it all does.
Yeah. I try every day to be the best person that I can be. And I ask that in my prayers, that please let me be the best person I can be. I get hurt easily though, because I trust people that I shouldn't sometimes.
Do you think you could protect yourself by not having an expectation of an outcome? You still trust. You're
Yeah.
doing what you can do and being as loving and open as you can. And if they don't deliver, can you
Yeah.
let it roll off your back?
I can, but it hurts for a little while. I have and I have to feel that first and get that out of the way, because if I stuff it, it'll come out sideways.
Yeah.
And I have to be very careful not to guilt people into doing what I want them to do.
Ah, got a little manipulation in there, huh?
Yeah, I think everybody
Survival.
does to some extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to watch that though, because especially with my granddaughters, I was such a big part of their lives when they were young, and now that they're grown up and outliving their life, I feel bad when I don't hear from them.
Hmm.
And I know they're just, living their life. They're young, they're both in their 20s,
Yeah.
but it still hurts me when I don't hear from them. And so sometimes I'll just send an emoji with a teardrop or something. or
That's
or
emotional
or
blackmail.
yeah, or send a text that says, "Gee, I wonder if I'd recognize your voice if you called me." years ago, I was pretty good at using sarcasm as a weapon.
Yeah. That was my
I try
household
not to
too.
do that anymore.
Sarcastic humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or say something and say, oh, well, I meant that to be funny, but I really didn't. That you in program you do a fourth step inventory of yourself, and that was one of the things that always came up for me was I really have to think before I speak. And one of the quotes that I love is, say what you mean and mean what you say, but don't say it mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use that slogan a lot.
Yeah, I just wonder, I'm putting a little paraphrased something in here from this article. We often mediate trust based on incomplete assessments, like we believe in a style or a niceness or a politeness, or we believe that we have devotion or loyalty or concept. And then safe space, we trust that that chair is going to be there, right?
Mhm.
But that's not really enough. And so he asks this other question, and this I think is kind of interesting with everything that's going on, social phenomenon, having social measures. What might be possible if we viewed the phenomenon of trust as a social practice that we generate rather than just a feeling or a belief or a space? We get to say as a collective.
I'm looking at the honor commitments and promises. I think people take those so personal that even if there's an emergency in your life and you couldn't keep your promise, they hold it against you forever.
Mm,
I've had friends that did that. So when I do make a promise, and when I do, I try to keep them. But when I do make a promise, I will always hedge my bet, so to speak, by saying, if something happens and I can't make it, please don't take it personal. It just means something really important came up. Because there are things in your life that do come up.
yeah.
And Sally and I have a friend that we bring to Shirley every week. And if we don't go, she takes it personal. So we had to sit down and say, hey, listen, you say you don't have a life. Well, we're saying we do have a life, and
Yeah.
stuff happens. Sally does things during the week as well as on the weekend. I have meetings I go to. It's part of my life. So I can't always keep that commitment to Shirley every Wednesday. Now Shirley completely understands that. She'll go, yeah, I understand. Stuff happens.
Uh-huh.
But our friend, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sally, does have a tendency to take it personal. Um,
And a lot of that's due to her lack of self-confidence too.
right, right. But it's also
She's
her
getting
lack
better
of
about it.
trust. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
She is
And
getting better.
trust, yeah.
Yeah. Right. But trust is a big issue for her because
Yeah,
her
she
trust
doesn't
is
trust
being
herself to start with.
true.
That's the big thing right there. She's starting from a place where she doesn't really trust herself. She's getting a little better at it. Yeah,
Yeah.
every day. But she's not as bad as she was 6 months ago, but she's one of those people that you don't make a commitment even with but if something happens, because she'll take it personally. We're trying to cure her of that.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot of people like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, because their trust has been broken so often, they just automatically assume that you're breaking their trust because you had to break that promise. I mean, if you just don't show up and don't give any explanation, that's different. That is breaking a trust. But if something comes up that you absolutely have to do, or if you get sick, like Shirley's come down with COVID several times in the last couple of months, so she had to break the commitment. The other thing I was looking at on your list, Laura, was vulnerability. A lot of people see vulnerability as a weakness. They don't understand it's a strength. It takes courage to show who you really are inside and to really speak your feelings, because people do take offense at your feelings sometimes, and think you're being mean, um, or you're not being honest. And again, it takes bravery to be fully honest, not only with yourself, but with other people, so that you can be trusted. And just putting an image out there isn't enough. You really need to, talk your talk and walk your walk, as the Native Americans say. And it's not easy to do, because a lot of people do not want to hear the truth.
Yeah.
They do not want to see the real you, because like my family, they still have me in that little pigeonhole of, she's the big sister, she's bossy, she's going to tell me what to do with my life. I don't care what you do with your life. My husband even looked at them one day and said, "You don't know your sister at all, do you?" A couple of them do, but not most of them, especially not my brother, because he sees me and he does not want me to come out of that, because that's not comfortable for him.
Wow.
Um, so it's difficult to um to let people see who you are. And when I started doing psychic work too, that my preface was, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but I got to tell you this, because I just talked to this dead person. You know, you gotta be, if vulnerability is dangerous and touchy.
Yeah.
um, but I prefer to be vulnerable, um, because that shows who I really am. I don't want to act a part like I did most of my life and pretend that I was loving what I did every day, because I didn't. I really hated my job, even though I did it well. I hated it. It was not where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And now that I'm writing books, as a matter of fact, another book has insisted that I write it this past week. It's even woken me up.
It
And
just popped out of nowhere.
it did. Yeah, it was like crazy. And then I remembered what Carrie said to somebody, when your characters wake you up and start telling you what their lines are, you know you're an author. And I said something to my little sister, and she goes, "Do I have to remind you how many times you did not want to be a nurse? That was what your mother wanted to be. She couldn't be it, so you got the job." She said, "It's taken you 73 years, but maybe you were finally doing what you're supposed to do."
Dang.
I can buy that.
Decades.
Yeah. I mean, this damn book has woken me up 3 times this week. You have to write this. No, I know you're going to forget it. You got to write it.
Write it down. Get your pencil, stupid.
Yeah, really. And Matt's going, "Where you going now? I thought you did." I got to write a little bit more. I've got half a book written in 3 days. And the other
Wow.
one's sitting there saying, "Hey, what about me? You're supposed to get me done." It's like, I don't know. Um, I don't know what I'm gonna tell my teacher when I don't come up with my deadline, but it's something I'll deal with.
Say another book got in the way.
Yeah. Well, and one of the first things they tell you is only write 1 book at a time.
Yeah.
I just watched a film of Chico Xavier, who's a Brazilian medium who wrote
Yeah.
over 400 books. And it was just talking
Wow.
about the struggles in his life, how people just didn't want to accept him. And, he was shunned and he had to move out of his family's home, the whole 9 yards. And then he was this spirit writer. And so he would just channel and just write and write. And people would just take papers from him as he was writing. He would just go through more and
Wow.
more and more.
Ooh.
And it's like, he would check in though. He would check in with his guides and say, is this really something I need to pursue? When he was having conflict with a family member or having an argument with a priest or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And so I guess you have the authority, and the ability to check in and say, am I doing it right or whatever? And trust that your guides are going to lead you in the right direction, right?
Well, I'm trusting that these characters are writing the book the way it's supposed to be. And it was funny, because when I first started writing my other book, it was like that. It was writing itself. But I got sidetracked somewhere. I think
Ah.
fear got in the way. I didn't trust that I could get it done. Back to trust. I
Wow.
didn't trust that I could meet that deadline because even though I'm a deadline person,
Yeah.
I'm also the queen of procrastination. And I will be up until whatever it takes the night before that deadline
Yep.
and get it done.
Get that science project finished.
Right. And yeah, my science project was a perfect example. It got finished the night before at midnight.
Yep.
Much to my mother's chagrin, because she was right there with me. So, but again, it goes back to trusting myself. Can I trust myself? I'm 73 years old. Can I trust myself to push myself to finish that book before the deadline? I will keep you posted because I don't know right now.
Yeah, I
I
suppose
don't.
because this is an official course that you've paid for and other people are leaning on that deadline that you can't push it, huh? You can't negotiate.
No, well, I can negotiate. I can extend it, but it costs me $1,400 a
Yeah,
month
yeah.
to extend it, and
Ooh.
there's this little financial officer I live with who says, when's that deadline? How come you're not writing that book?
Yep.
I've been possessed. And the name of the book is Witches, Spirits, Poltergeists, and Mouse Hockey.
Okay.
And I was gonna leave it as a semi-comedy. It's turned out to be a murder mystery, so I don't even know where it's going. They're really taking me on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. But it's fun, it's fun. I'm having fun with it, which I
That's
wasn't
awesome.
having with my serious book. But I've already had Toastmasters wants me to read from it. I've already had one of my CMAs. It says, would you please get it done? I work in a OBGYN office and they need your book to
Yeah.
give to their patients. So it'll
Okay.
get done. I have
You got little pinprick triggers.
yeah, I got 3 weeks to trust myself enough to get it finished.
Okay.
Because I know how to finish it. And now that I got Dragon Speak to work, I don't have to type it.
Okay.
So my carpal tunnel is
That
no
helps.
longer an excuse. Yes.
Awesome.
So I guess I can trust myself to. Thank you, Laura, for bringing this topic up. I think I
Yep.
needed to hear this. I needed to hear
And
this.
probably trusting ourselves is one of the harder things to do.
It is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I really have to push myself to do something that I
Mhm.
know I can do. I just don't really want to, but I should. This whole conversation
Well,
in
you
my
got to
head.
stop shitting on yourself.
Yeah.
Shitting on ourselves is not good.
Yep.
But again, think about what you were told by that alcoholic father all your life. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You never do anything right. You never finish anything. One of my ex-husband's aunts, I overheard her saying to my mother-in-law one day, what's wrong with Paula? She has no sticky stuff on her feet. She's got to keep changing jobs. Well, I went from one boring job to another one. Of course, I'm going to change it. When I finally found the right one, I stayed there for 12 years. So it's all that stuff you hear, Laura, all your life, because I had an alcoholic father too. I resemble you very much. And you can't. So even in your 70s, you're still, that little tape won't shut off. Who the hell do you think you are to write a book? You're not smart enough. Nobody's going to listen to you anyway.
Yeah.
And one of the exercises in my classes are to write all of those things you think you believe, like I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, who the hell am I to write a book? And then write a positive on the other side, but then take your negative list and give it a blessing and burn it and let it go. And I did that last week.
Okay.
And it was an interesting feeling it was almost like somebody ripped something out of me. But because I trust my teachers, and we're back to trust, because I trust my teachers and their methods,
Yeah.
I believe that this is going to help, which is probably why I started writing another book. I don't know.
There you go. It
Yeah,
opened something. Yeah.
yeah. So, but because I was able to let go of those things that I thought I believed, but realized were my parents and
Yep.
whoever else's
Yeah.
belief, that I really didn't believe that about me, because I always made my deadline. Yeah, it was the last minute. I mean, I've had deadlines all my career, because when you do a chart, you have a deadline.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
do a report, you have a deadline. So I guess I can trust myself to meet my deadline. And again, Laura, thank you for bringing this one up, because I really needed to hear me say that.
Yeah.
Mm,
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Bless you.
You're welcome.
Mm.
It's a biggie for me too.
As far as help being remembering details, that was one of the reasons I gained so much respect when I worked at Stone Ridge. So much so that one of the docs came up to me and he goes, "Good God, there's 400 people who live here and you know something about every single one of them," which I did. They had to pass my office on their way to dinner, and I would be watching and I'd say, "You're limping today. What's going on?" Or, "Weren't you going to have your cataract surgery last week and you didn't tell me?" Or, "How's your son? I heard he had the flu." And it would just blow their minds. But I have one of those heads that hangs on to things like that. But it did help build trust, because it told them that I cared about them in their lives.
Yeah.
And I just told them it's because I'm a nurse and I'm nosy. They thought that was funny. But I did care about those people. I love
Yeah.
those people.
Yeah.
So I think that that does help engender, get somebody to trust you. Always
Yeah.
being honest is tough, because when you're a nurse, you can't always tell the complete truth. I mean, we know doctors lie, but nurses are left to the truth. But you can't always be completely truthful, because it's like when Jean was teaching us her classes in mediumship, even though you see that person's death, you don't know that's definite.
Mm.
So she said, I would never tell anybody they were going to die. I would say something like, "Well, are your affairs in order? How's your life going?" But you really can't always just say you're going to croak next week.
Right.
Doesn't it's doesn't really engender uh, being liked. Never mind being trusted. But
Yeah.
but what I found in my career is nurses told the truth more often than doctors. So that's why in many cases nurses were more respected than the docs, because everybody was gotten so they had expected the doc to lie. "You put me on this medication because you have stock in it."
Yeah.
you know so I think that's why nurses don't get sued as often as doctors do, because we do tell people the hard truth. um,
Mhm.
and Brene Brown has books, and I'm sure you've read them, Nick,
Mhm.
about telling the hard truth, so you can be trusted in corporations, which must be monumental, to
Yeah.
teach corporations to tell the truth, and so you can trust it. But she's doing it. She's doing it right there in California.
Yeah.
She's an amazing woman. Anybody who needs to learn about trust and reading, read any of her books. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Enough from me. Somebody else can talk now.
Well, it's really hard today to trust too with all the world of scammers.
Oh,
Oh my God, there's so many scams out there. It's just unbelievable. I feel sorry for those people. You
a
know,
lot of
that
them are aimed at senior citizens too.
Mhm.
yeah, I know. I get the calls all the time.
My
Yeah.
phone doesn't work anymore, so I'm glad. My home phone. That's where they used to call me. My home
Well,
phone.
now I'm
Okay.
even getting scam texts.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Jeez,
Yep.
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Or you get the email, your order is ready. My order of what?
Yeah,
I didn't order anything.
Yeah.
yeah,
And somebody with a memory loss might buy into that, or
yeah.
will probably buy into that.
Yeah.
I got scammed on my computer. The guy
Really?
said there was something wrong with my Windows and they could help me fix it. And I actually let him take over my computer and I
Mhm.
sat there and watched him make
Mhm.
all these buys of gift cards from all these different places and I couldn't stop it
Oh, wow.
because
Oh,
he took
wow.
over my computer.
Wow.
Wow.
It was horrible. I unplugged it and everything and turned it off and it was awful.
Wow.
Yeah, I fell for it.
How did you undo it?
I called my credit union right away and
Mhm.
told them what happened. I did get the money back, but he had already spent like $300.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, they work fast.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. I don't trust any email or any text anymore unless it
no, me
says
either.
the name on top that I know.
Yeah.
Yep,
And even then, you have to be leery. You
You're right.
almost have to
Yeah.
contact the other one and say, did
Yep.
you send this? I mean,
Yeah.
Facebook is big for that. How many friends?
especially on Messenger.
Yeah, how
on
many friend
Messenger, I-
requests do you get for the same person? You know?
Mm,
Yeah.
And it's usually the same thing. It usually says, um, do you know who died? And that's it.
yeah,
Click on this link to read their obituary, you know.
right.
I've gotten that. I
Yeah.
get phone calls every week telling me I'm going to prison for tax evasion. And I go, that's good. At least I'll have 3 square meals a day.
That's right.
True, very true. Yeah.
And now the phone calls are now coming across in Chinese that I'm gonna go to prison.
Really?
Yeah,
And
I
and I
don't
keep
know.
getting one about final expenses. Oh, gee, yeah, I really want to sit here and talk to you about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And so I'm gonna do it over the phone. But
Right.
they're aiming at a mark who will,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
know. Oh, I was just thinking about that last week. And you get hoodwinked.
Hmm.
And then it's really, really tough to build your trust back
Yeah.
Yeah.
once you've been burned. And I kind of wonder if that's what they don't prey on sometimes. It's the fact that you mistrust, therefore you're gonna believe them. I know that sounds really screwy logic, but I kind of think that's the way it works.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, you could be right about that. Yeah, that makes sense, really.
Yeah.
Because I'm better, I'm not going to cheat you, especially with the what Shirley got from the Reverend so and so from Africa, laundering his money or something. She almost bought it, and I said,
Oh.
"Cheryl, I got
Oh.
that one. You can't trust
Yeah.
that one."
Or the Persian prince, or
Yeah.
there's some Lejeune lawsuit that
Oh yeah, that's a new
yeah,
one.
that's a big one. I'm
Yeah,
constantly getting
can't-
stuff on that
can't
and I
Lejeune.
delete.
They're almost comical when you can look at them that way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I was at Stone Ridge, one of our guys whose wife was demented, who was a financial expert, got something from Canada that said,
You're
you
welcome.
won, yeah, you won the lottery. And he actually sent them over $50,000 in 6 months to try and get that lottery. And then his wife said to his daughter one day, I think your father's been taken. And she explained it to her daughter, who said, oh my God. He was so horrified. He had a heart attack and he died.
Oh my gosh.
because he couldn't even trust himself. And yet his demented wife figured it out. I mean, that's the
Wow.
consequences of what those people do.
I know, I know, it's
Granted,
horrible.
it's a nasty but I've seen it happen. I mean, he was so proud of himself that he was a financier and he knew everything, and he got taken for
Well,
50,000.
I play Words with Friends, and for the longest time, these guys would challenge me to a game. A man would challenge me to a game,
Mhm.
and then they wanted to chat.
Oh,
And as soon as they wanted to chat, I knew because I did it once, and the guy started going on and asking me all these personal questions,
mhm.
and asked me or told me that he was a widower with a child, and that he worked on a offshore drilling, and pretty soon they all had the same story.
Yep.
They were all the same story. They just
Mhm.
would use somebody's picture,
Yep.
and they would lure you into asking you for money.
Yep.
There's
And
I'd
then,
like to come and visit you, but I lost my wallet and blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
There
right.
was a woman on Dr. Phil that got taken like that. She was in love with the guy, and she had never met him in person. And she had given him, over a course of a couple of years, $250,000.
Wow.
My
And she had
God.
never met him. She was
Desperate
old.
female. Mm,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
horrible.
They prey on.
they're even invading the psychic world now. There's this one guy, he's Padre, he calls himself. He'll give you a reading, your angel reading, and so you click on it to see what it's about, and that's where they start asking you questions. And so delete, just
Mm,
Yeah.
Awful.
unsubscribe,
They're
delete.
everywhere.
uh, So, you're right. It's hard to trust anything anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I guess we're lucky if we can trust ourselves and our little group here.
Yeah, I think scientifically they're finding that there's overall goodness in the world, and so that the majority of people aren't those scammers. But
Mhm.
you just hear so much about it that it's like, woof,
yeah,
how far will it go?
Well, it's like the news is no good news. You only hear about the bad people in the world
Right,
and
yeah.
the
right.
stupid ones. Very rarely do you hear about the kid in Philadelphia who collected blankets and passed them out to homeless people. And
Right.
that
Yeah,
was only a little blurb,
yeah.
which I thought was marvelous and should have been front page news.
Yeah.
Someone do something good. But the news media makes money on bad news, I guess. What does that
Yeah,
say
good
about
news
us?
doesn't sell.
Yeah, right. What does that say about us?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, prime example is we look at all the election coverage presently. The news isn't good. It's all bad. Like, as a prime example, the financial numbers came out last week for inflation. Well, inflation has been decreasing each month. Now, it may only be 1%, but all of a sudden the news broadcast is, oh my God, the sky is falling, the inflation is still the same, and it depends on what slant you put on the story.
Yeah.
And I always joke that I watch 5 news broadcasts a day, and I figure somewhere in all that I might garner the truth. And
Good
and
luck.
it takes 5 news networks to discern the truth in the middle of all this, because everybody is telling me the story that affirms their belief.
Mm,
So
And
I have
everybody
to
has an
just
agenda.
depend on my belief, and it all depends on, like surveys, how you ask the question as into how you're going to get a response.
Yeah.
And all that does is erode trust in the community.
Mm.
little by little, and we kind of have to say, "Hmm, that doesn't quite sound right," and therefore you have to trust your instincts. It doesn't feel right, therefore it probably is not right, and prove me wrong.
Well, and that brings us back to the concept of having a social practice or a choice in, as a community to hold a certain standard and to be a certain way and to demand that of the people that are amongst us, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and try to just hang out with positive people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
'Cause it's pretty easy to get depressed watching the news.
Yeah,
Don't watch it.
right.
I don't usually.
I scan headlines and that's it.
Yeah,
No, that's Matt's job. I don't even
Yeah,
look at anything that has to do with news. I don't really want to know.
Yeah.
I'm just tired of the lies, I guess. Anyhow.
so this was a good topic. Thank you, Laura.
Yes,
Yeah,
Laura,
you're
thank you.
welcome.
This was great. And are you going to
Okay.
pray us out? I know we're over, but you're going to pray us out, Laura?
Okay. Just close your eyes and take a nice slow breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And another. And one more. Mother, Father, God, creator of all that is, Great Spirit, we come to you humble and grateful. And we ask that you send healing around the world, and especially to friends that we know that need it. We ask that this day is a good day. We ask for gratitude, so important. We ask for trust and faith. And we know that you will answer our prayers in love and gratitude. So it is.
So
Oh, it is.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you, Nikki, for
You're
moderating.
welcome. You are welcome.
Yeah.
And we'll come up with the topic for
Stay
next
safe.
week sometime.
We'll
What
think of
about
something.
attitude of gratitude?
Oh,
What are you grateful for?
that could be a
That's
good one.
good.
Let's
Yep.
try that. Okay. It just
Yeah.
That
came to me.
works.
Okay.
Nice. All right. Have a good
Bye.
one.
Y'all, bye.
Stay
Great
safe.
week.
Stay
See you
safe. Have a
next
great
week.
week.
Ciao.